Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 630, beginning with the line, "The duality begins with conscious life," but we'll go back and do the summary of the last paragraph first.
Not only a summary of the whole the previous para, but until now what he has said and the line in which he is proceeding. The chapter is the origin of falsehood and evil. Then he says that when you experience the self and all in the spiritual planes, you see that there is no falsehood there. There is no evil there at all. So the question arises, from where is this evil and falsehood coming? So he starts examining. So he says there are two movements. One is a movement of manifestation, which is the involution, and the other is the evolution up. These are, like he says, two ladders, parallel ladders. One is coming down, one is going up. The involutionary ladder downwards is starting from Satchidananda and ending in the inconscient, or you can even say matter. The other one is starting from matter or inconscience and going up towards, and that's still incomplete. It is not yet completed. When will it complete? We really don't know, but it's a step-by-step process. So then he says that when you are starting from that which is pure, infinite, fully conscious, fully powerful, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, it's a starting point. So nothing can go wrong. There can be limitation, but there cannot be any falsehood.
No error.
No error at all. But limitation can be there. So these planes which are there on the left hand side, if you want, which are coming down, they are pure planes of consciousness, and we will go according to the system of the Vedas, 7 planes of consciousness. Sat, Chit, Ananda, supermind, mind, life, body. So these planes are what he calls typal planes, and they don't evolve. They are static planes in which beings live in all the planes. They live right up to the supermind, they live these planes, but there is no movement there is no evolution. They are typal planes, and they are pure in themselves. They may be limited, but they are pure. Then when you start from the opposite here, from inconscient, no consciousness, no truth, nothing, blank. So when you start evolving, it's like crossing a wild forest. You are likely to make mistakes because you don't know where you are going. In the other case, you know where you are going, you are manifesting yourself. So here in the evolution, the possibility of error arises. And now he is looking at matter. So what is the nature of ignorance? What is the nature of falsehood? What is the nature of evil? You can immediately see that something common to them is dualities. That which is false, you can think of something which is truth. That which is limited, you can think of something which is unlimited at a mental level, not before that. So the dualities are something which exists from this side. So now he says, here there is no falsehood or error. Let us now examine the evolutionary movement. Where does it start from? It starts from matter. Now matter is one single existence, one single substance.
But it's not evil.
That's what I am coming to. When it is just one and there is nothing else but one, there are no dualities. So if there are no dualities, there cannot be any truth or error, there cannot be. Now you come to the next plane, is life. As soon as life comes up, okay, dualities start. Good, bad, evil, falsehood, truth, these things start. So there you see that the possibility of error is there and the possibility of falsehood is there. Then you come up to the mind level and it gets reinforced. The ego starts at the vital level and gets reinforced up to the mental level. You go beyond the mind, again there is no falsehood and no error. Because there is no ego there. There is no distinction. When you go to the higher self, you are in a consciousness of oneness.
The spiritual.
In matter there is oneness, in life there is duality, in mind there is duality, above the mind no duality. Yes.
Beginning with higher mind.
Yes. The spiritual planes of consciousness,
Yes.
it's Shrevdo scheme.
Yes.
The higher mind, the element mind, the intuitive mind and the overmind, and then finally the third level, which is the supermind. So there you find that there is no falsehood, there is no truth. There may be limitation, but not falsehood. So this is what he is saying, that it looks like it is only limited. It's a there are many other small things he discusses, which we will not go into because there are the details. For instance, he says that in matter, there is, when multiplicity is there, okay, multiplicity is there but not dualities. For instance, oxygen has got a certain character, hydrogen has got a certain character, plants have got certain characteristics. Some are very useful to man, some are poisonous. But he says these features, characteristics of these elements, okay, take arsenic, it's the best example, it's poison. But its poisonness doesn't get expressed until someone experiences it. So matter as such, there are characteristics, but they are neutral. Only when they are experienced, then their character comes out. Okay? And then he says also that, take fire for instance. Fire is something neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It can be used for, it can burn, but it can also be of great help to you. Then take water. It can also be of great help to you. It can also have floods and destroy, kill you. So this is what he says, that in matter there is no falsehood or evil. In life and mind there is falsehood and evil. Above that again there is nothing. There is no ego in matter. There is ego in life and mind, but above that there is no ego at all, so no dualities. Up to this point we have come.
But he also mentions
Pardon?
these forces that are evil.
Okay. So that he says that in spiritual experience you find that when you go into the either the intraconscient or vertically into the spiritual planes of consciousness, you do see that there are hostile forces. So you may think that hostile forces are pre-existing in the involutionary planes. He says it could, you could think of it is that way. Then he says that many religions have these ideas that there is, just as there is absolute truth, there can be absolute falsehood. Christianity, Islam, Manichaeanism, even Zoroastrianism, they all have this. There is a good and there is evil, and they are equal to each other, and to save the reputation of the divine, you say that the evil is not created by him, it is created by anti-divine forces. But in India we are starting from Advaita, we are starting from, there is no duality at all, everything is only one. So in that case, where is evil coming from? That's a question that he is looking for, and he finds this. So he says falsehood is not absolute, it's a result, it's a consequential existence, it has a consequential existence. It is something that comes into existence in the course of evolution. There can be absolute no falsehood. There can be immensity of falsehood, but no absoluteness. Truth is absolute, but absolute evil and falsehood does not exist. There can be immensities, and these beings exist in the evolutionary upward planes of life and mind. Above mind, no again. So hostile forces are there is no doubt about it, and they can be huge, they can be immeasurable. He uses the word immeasurable, but immeasurability is not infinity, so they are not absolute. Up to this point we have come. Yes, small details are there, very interesting. But this is gist, this is what we have come up to. So now we read what we have to read. The duality begins. The duality begins with conscious life and emerges fully with the development of mind in life. The vital mind, the mind of desire and sensation, is the creator of the sense of evil and of the fact of evil. So, interesting. Sense of evil, man can think of, have a sense that this is not right, evil. Note interestingly that the animal has no sense of evil. For the animal there is no evil. He just follows his nature. He can even eat a tiger can eat a live deer, still living. That's not evil at that level. Okay? But when mind comes in, the dualities get more enforced, reinforced, and then you can think of, so, the vital mind, the mind of desire and sensation, is the creator of the sense of evil and of the fact of evil.
Now that's an important point, the fact
that
of
means
evil.
To say that it's not only your perception, there is also evil. Whether you perceive it or not, there is evil. Okay, so the sense of evil is individual, personal, but the fact of evil is universal, not individual. Moreover, in animal life, the fact of evil is there, the evil of suffering, the sense of suffering, the evil of violence and cruelty and strife and deception, but the sense of moral evil is absent. In the animal, there is no morality. In animal life, there is no duality of sin or virtue. All action is neutral and permissible for the preservation of life and its maintenance, and for the satisfaction of the life instincts. Satisfaction of life instincts, desire, hunger, sense of possession, all valid at the animal level. Okay, so the sensational values of good and evil are inherent in the form of pain and pleasure, vital satisfaction and vital frustration. But the mental idea, the moral response of the mind to these values, are a creation of the human being. There is no morality in universal nature. It's man with his mind who experiences it and feels it to be so. But note interestingly that even when man goes above his mental and goes to the self, again he sees there that there is no good and bad. He goes beyond morality.
There is no morality also in the spiritual planes?
No.
Exactly.
No morality. Why? That we have also discussed. But a brief reminder of why you don't see it. Because in the physical world, you see dualities. If there is good, there is bad. If there is pleasant, there is unpleasant. But the best way, when you go above, you see that pleasant and unpleasant are only two poles of the same thing. They are not opposites, they are complementary aspects. To explain it further, again, my most famous example of the breeze. So when you see the breeze is very soft and pleasant, you say it's very nice, it's good. But when that same substance, wind, comes at 200 kilometers an hour at you, you say it is evil. It destroys homes, it destroys trees, it kills people. So it is evil. So you are seeing at this level good and evil, you are saying falsehood and truth. But when you go up, you don't see the two ends, you see only the wind, you see oneness. So there is no evil and there is no, so you don't see morality, you see only the oneness, you see only force. Force acting gently or acting violently is only force. That's what you see, the force, you don't see the results. So morality disappears at the spiritual level. Okay? The satisfaction of life instincts. The sensational values of good and evil are inherent in the form of pain and pleasure, vital satisfaction and vital frustration. But the mental idea, the moral response of the mind to these values are a creation of the human mind. It does not follow, as might be hastily inferred, that they are unrealities, mental constructions only, and that the only true way to receive the activities of nature is either a neutral indifference or an equal acceptance, or intellectually an admission of all that she may do as a divine or a natural law in which everything is impartially admissible. We'll look at the sentence carefully again. It does not follow. So when you are seeing, mind is creating evil and falsehood and the opposites. But you have to be careful not to come to hasty conclusions. It does not follow, as might be hastily inferred, that they are unrealities. They are not unrealities. They are realities. Why is Srimad saying that? Because when you go to the self, you see the physical world as only images, forms, which are transient. So they don't have any essential reality. You see only the forms. But therefore you must not jump to the conclusion that forms are transient and therefore unreal, like the Mayavadins say, the Buddhists say, and even the Mayavada, which is that they say the same thing. So he's saying you must not jump to that conclusion. Mental construction only, and that the only true way to receive the activities of nature, what should be our attitude then? Either a neutral indifference or an equal acceptance. Okay? A neutral indifference, but he is not talking of a neutral rejection. Okay? That also is there. A neutral indifference or an equal acceptance. A neutral indifference, samatha. Equality. I am not concerned with that. Not interested. It's only a shadow play, so why to bother about it? Or an equal acceptance.
And that's interesting.
I accept that it is true.
Yes.
Okay? I don't accept that it's only an image. It is true. There is a truth behind. When you go to the self, you do see the physical world as unreal. You see it as Maya. But don't jump to conclusions, because you go slightly higher up and you see that behind the mere transient form, because it is transient, you think it is unreal, but behind that transient form, there is a reality which is not transient. In the stone, there is a divine presence. The stone is a transient reality. Transient reality. For the Mayavadin, it is not even real. It is transient. But for the Vedanta, the real Vedanta, not the false Vedanta, it is the divine presence is the reality. The form may be unreal, but the divine presence is real in the stone. So that's what Sadhguru is saying. We have to be careful about that. So, equal acceptance, or intellectually an admission of all that she may do as a divine or a natural law in which everything is impartially admissible. So she is a nature. So nature is doing all these things. That is indeed one side of the truth. There is an infra-rational truth of life and matter which is impartial and neutral and admits all things as facts of nature and serviceable for the creation, preservation or destruction of life. Creation, preservation, destruction of life. Three necessary movements of the universal energy which are all connectedly indispensable and each in its place of equal value. So, this is the justification for the Indian theory of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. There is a constant creation, but there is a simultaneous destruction and a simultaneous preservation. If the creation and the destruction were separated in time, you would see the transition. But because it is simultaneous, you see only the preservation of forms. You don't see the destruction and now you see the creation, but they are simultaneous. So Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahma is creating, Shiva is destroying, but because they are simultaneous, Vishnu seems to give the picture of a continuity, a preservation. But there is no preservation really. At each instant in time there is destruction and creation at the same time, simultaneous.
You have mentioned if you separate them,
Yeah.
you can see them more clearly.
That's right. But because they are simultaneous, you can't distinguish. You feel everything is continuous. So, serviceable for the creation, preservation, destruction of life. Three necessary movements of the universal energy, which are all connectedly indispensable and each in its place of equal value. Why is he saying this? Because you get the idea that destruction can be evil and construction can be good. That's why he is mentioning that. Okay, so there is too a truth of the detached reason which can look on all that is thus admitted by nature as serviceable to her processes in life and matter, and observe everything that is with an unmoved, neutral impartiality and acceptance. So there are so many different truths at different levels. You can experience it this way, you can experience it that way. So observe everything that is with an unmoved, neutral impartiality and acceptance. This is what gives you the utter silence and peace in the self. You are not bothered about these things at all, they don't affect you at all. Okay? Impartial, unmoved, neutral impartiality and acceptance. You accept it. The Mayavadins don't accept, they reject. Okay. This is a philosophic and scientific reason that witnesses and seeks to understand, but considers it futile to judge the activities of the cosmic energy. So, those who are escaping Mayavada, Buddhism and all that, they say it's not worth examining the nature of action here. Leave it alone. The reality is there and we have experienced the reality, that's enough. But for Sri Aurobindo and the Gita, it's not like that. There is a reason, so you have to find out the reason for that destruction and creation. Okay, so that's what he said. So now he is giving you a hint about why destruction and creation is evil and good, from where it is coming. Okay, he is giving you a hint. Destruction, preservation, creation. This is a philosophic and scientific reason that witnesses and seeks to understand, but considers it futile to judge the activities of the cosmic energy. There is too a supra-rational truth formulating itself in spiritual experience, which can observe the play of universal possibility, accept all impartially as the true and natural features and consequences of a world of ignorance and inconscience, or admit all with calm and compassion as a part of the divine working. But while it awaits the awakening of a higher consciousness and knowledge as a sole escape from what presents itself as evil, is ready with help and intervention where that is truly helpful and possible. But nonetheless, there is also this other middle truth of consciousness which awakens us to the values of good and evil and the appreciation of their necessity and importance. This awakening, whatever may be the sanction or the validity of its particular judgments, one of the indispensable steps in the process of evolutionary nature. Now he is giving you a very clear statement that don't think that evil is something bad, rejectable. It's got a function. There is a purpose to it. That's what he is hinting at.
And he says a middle truth of consciousness.
Yeah, there are so many truths. So he has given you all the possibilities. We'll just read the summary of what he is saying to get the gist of what he is saying. Okay, so he packs in so much of meaning and so many things in, so that's why a summary is sometimes very necessary. The dualities do not exist in matter. Very clear statement. There is only oneness in matter. Where and when do they begin, the dualities? It is with conscious life that they commence, but culminate in the vital mind. The mind of desire and sensation creates a sense of evil and also the fact of evil. Suffering, violence, cruelty, strife and deception, All these exist in the animal world. But the sense of moral evil is absent in the animal. It does not have the dualities of sin and virtue. The animal kills cruelly, deceives cunningly, but does not suffer from the sense of wrongdoing, of something that ought not to be done. That is not there at all. Okay, so the cruelty of lion and tiger, killing and eating by tearing the newborn calf or fawn, camouflage for self-protection or attack is deception, but there is no sense of wrongdoing. Camouflage and deception is very much there in nature. Okay, camouflage is deception. Okay, but at our level, deception is something evil. It's not true. But in the animal world, it's natural. Okay, so this is a very interesting fact what he's saying. If one studies biology, one sees how nature, there is deception everywhere. Because the weak have to be protected and the strong have the right to attack the weak. But the weak has to be protected. So deception is one way of self-protection. It's so interesting to look at all this from even the biological point of view.
And especially flowers that can camouflage themselves, or the eating these plants that eat insects.
Yeah, the carnivorous plant. So it attracts with its colors and fragrance, it attracts the insect. But once the insect comes in, there's a glue there, and the insect gets trapped, and then the flower closes, and then it is digested. It's a carnivorous plant. So that's deception. Come into my parlor, says the spider, and then eats it up. So there is deception at all the levels.
There's an interesting story about a plant that I believe Mother named Intuition. This plant has a very foul smell, and it attracts the flies to go inside of it. The fly gets inside, flies around, spreads around the pollen, but it can't get out because the what do you call that?
The glue-like substance.
No, it's the spikes. The spikes are facing this way.
Okay.
In 3 days, the spikes flatten out and the fly can come out.
The one you are talking about is a plant which flowers only once in 12 years. And it attracts, it sends out a smell of rotten meat. A rotting meat smell comes out. There is one in the ashram. We had a plant near Narada's room. There was a plant like that. A rotten smell of rotting meat. And the carrion eaters, okay, insects come. Bugs and insects come in and get trapped. And then the pollinization takes place, and in 3 days' time, there is a flower. So, very interesting. Parasites. Parasites is a feature of nature. Now, parasite is something which is at our level is wrong. I am going on exploiting you. That's totally wrong. But the plants, there is no such. It goes, climbs up on a tree, sucks the sap, and the parasite is fine. Even the birds, okay? The cuckoo lays its eggs in the other bird's nest. And the crow thinks that it is my egg, and it hatches. And it's even worse. When the cuckoo comes out of the egg, it kicks out the other eggs. So you can see how it's so interesting. So in nature, there is falsehood, there is evil, there is all this deception, but it is not interpreted as such. It is a necessary process for the preservation, destruction and creation of life. Yes. That's what he's saying. Highly interesting. Okay, so I'm still reading the summary, and let me finish that. Okay, so pain and pleasure, vital satisfaction and frustration have inbuilt in them the feelings of good and bad, which lead to good and evil. It is in man that sin and virtue, good and evil, wrongdoing and right doing originate and take firm root. But we must not jump to the conclusion that morality is only a mental construction and therefore unreal and invalid. So, man must accept both sin and virtue impartially without moral judgment. This is not a valid conclusion. Okay, you cannot think that the physical world is unreal, which the Buddhists are doing, the Mayavadins are doing. They are all thinking that it is unreal. Srila says we need not come to that conclusion. You can if you want, it's a possibility, but not necessary. It is true that morality does not exist in matter. It is also true that it does not exist above the mind, in the Brahman consciousness. It is also true in yogic discipline. An equality, a samatha, an impartiality towards pleasure and disgust is recommended. An impartiality is recommended. But all this does not render morality invalid or inapplicable in the ordinary life of man. Very interesting, you can see and you can very clearly see, but it need not be rejected. Okay, so it is truth of the middle region. So there is a truth of in matter, there is a truth of life and mind, and there is a truth above the mind. So it's a truth of middle region. Okay, even if it does not exist in the primary or the tertiary levels of consciousness. Primary, matter, no evil, no falsehood. Life and matter in the middle, yes, falsehood, evil do exist. Above the mind again, they don't exist. Okay, so or tertiary levels of consciousness. Ethics, morality, helps man to surpass himself and get rid of all imperfection. The necessity and importance of ethics is obvious. It awakens man to the spiritual life. If you are an animal, there is no morality, therefore no possibility of progress. It's a static condition. But with man, morality comes in and its usefulness is to get disgusted with the lower and the desire to go to the higher. That's why he has got his own use. So therefore, evil and falsehood, although an intermediate phenomenon, has got its own usefulness. That's what he is saying. Now we can go to the next para.
Good.
But from what then does this awakening proceed? What is awakening? Oh, there is a chapter in the Synthesis of Yoga which is the standards of conduct. It's a very interesting, and there is a shadow of that coming here. So he is saying, from what then does this awakening proceed? So what is meant by awakening? From one level you are going to another level, to another level, to another level. And there the levels are, first of all, non-morality, no morality at all. Okay. Then, first of all, there is the social conduct. Then there is the collective conduct. Then there is the morality, and then there is the spiritual level. So this is the awakening, slowly awakening comes. First, ego-based action is understandable. All animal life is working for itself. Man also in the beginning is only trying to live for himself, and so ego is valid at that level. But then the ego has to be limited, so the social standard comes up. Society tells you what is right and what is wrong, what you can do, you cannot do. Okay? The red light in the traffic signal tells you that you cannot now move. So, some things are imposed upon you, social standards. First is the ego standard, everything is valid. At the social standard, some things are not valid. Then you come to the mental level, okay, where you tell yourself what is right and what is wrong. Society need not tell you. So there is a difference between society's rules and the moral rules. In the second level, society is telling you what is right and what is wrong, you can't do. In the third level of morality, you tell yourself and others what is right and wrong. Then at the spiritual level, fourth level, morality disappears. So that's what he's talking about here, awakening. But from that, what then does this awakening proceed? What is it in the human being that originates and gives its power and place to the sense of good and evil? If we regard only the process, we may agree that it is the vital mind that makes the distinction. Its first valuation is sensational and individual. All that is pleasant, helpful, beneficial to the life ego is good. All that is unpleasant, malefic, injurious or destructive is evil at the vital mind level. Its next valuation is utilitarian and social. All that is considered helpful to the associated life, all that it demands from the individual in order to remain in association and to regulate association for the best maintenance, satisfaction, development, good order of the associated life and its units is good. All that has, in the view of society, a contrary effect or tendency is evil. But thinking mind then comes in with its own valuation and strives to find out an intellectual basis, an idea of law or principle, rational or cosmic, a law, a law of karma perhaps, or an ethical system founded on reason or on an aesthetic, emotional or hedonistic basis. Religion brings in her sanctions. There is a word or law of God that enjoins righteousness, even though nature permits or stimulates its opposite. Or perhaps truth and righteousness are themselves God, and there is no other divinity. But behind all this practical or rational enforcement of the human ethical instinct, there is a feeling that there is something deeper. All these standards are either too narrow and rigid and complex, or complex and confused, uncertain, subject to alteration by a mental or a vital change or evolution. Yet it is felt that there is a deeper abiding truth and something within us that can have the intuition of that truth. In other words, that the real sanction is inward, spiritual and psychic. The traditional account of this inner witness is conscience, a power of perception in us, half mental, half intuitive. But this is something superficial, constructed, unreliable. There is certainly within us, though less easily active, more masked by surface elements, a deeper spiritual sense, the soul's discernment, an inborn light within our nature. This whole para is based on that chapter which I told you about, standards of conduct. So very clearly he has told you, the first standard is the ego. When you are acting at that level, it's perfectly valid.
Self-preservation.
Pardon?
Self-preservation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So ego is perfectly valid at that level. You go to slightly higher level. Ego, when you are acting egoistically, you are going to step on somebody's toes. So society comes in. You can't play loud music after 12 o'clock. A law comes in, social law. So the first is total freedom to do what you want. That happens at animal level, even at the human level. Then comes the social law. Thus far and no further. You can do this much, you can't do this much. That's a social law. Slightly better condition. Then comes the moral law. The moral law is that which you tell yourself what is right and wrong. The individual tells society. In the second one, society is telling the individual what he can do and cannot do.
Give some examples of the third.
I gave you a very easy example of the traffic light. Okay? It's a social law. Society is telling you when the light is red, you can't go.
Yeah, but above that.
Above that is morality. Morality is the third law, which is above. So that's
But I cannot decide.
okay. I understand.
Got it.
I understand what you're saying. I should not be unkind to somebody. I should not cheat that other man. These are things which don't exist at animal level. I cannot steal from somebody. So this is morality. So there is a sense of evil, good and evil that comes in when the mind starts acting. Then a point comes when you realize that what you think is evil may not be so evil as you think. Okay? So, a hungry man steals a loaf of bread. Morally, it is totally wrong. But if you have compassion, you look at it and say, it's not that wrong really. Okay? So, your viewpoint changes and you feel that there is something more than morality. So, a vague sense of something which is, morality is something at the mental level, but they need not always be right. Then there is the spiritual standard, which they speak about the psychic being. Okay, that's what he is saying in this para. So, again we will summarize what he is saying. Okay, so man, I am just summarizing what we read just now. Man awakens to a spiritual life after the moralistic period is crossed. But what causes this awakening? What in the human being is impelling the upward urge towards the spiritual life? A first preliminary look shows us the vital mind, which is the first to make a distinction between good and bad. The first judgment is sensation, what is pleasant and unpleasant, based on the individual level. All that is pleasant, helpful, beneficial to the life ego is good. All that is unpleasant, harmful, injurious, destructive is evil. The next stage of evaluation is the utilitarianism and socialism, the second stage. Society tells you what is good and what is bad, what you can do and what you cannot do. Whatever is helpful to society, not the individual anymore, the community is good. Whatever prolongs the life and well-being of the group, the community is good. All that contributes to the detriment of society is evil, bad. Or at this stage, reason enters, which is the third stage, and tries to make laws for distinguishing good and evil. It tries to find universal laws, okay, karma, ethical, emotional, hedonistic systems. Utilitarianism, hedonism, these are all theories which are there. Utilitarianism, I think Roger Bentham, I think he was a philosopher, I am not sure of the name, but one of them, utilitarianism and hedonism, he is one of them. He says, what is good? So, they define good as something, the maximum benefit to the maximum number of people. That is utilitarianism. That which is useful to the maximum number of people is good. Something so artificial. Okay? And hedonism, that which is pleasant to the maximum number of people is good. So then you go beyond this idea. Okay? So that's what he is saying. These are all intermediary theories. Now, religion too makes its entry, which is the fourth stage, brings in the laws of God, insists on righteousness, stresses right action and wrongdoing, in spite of nature permitting and even encouraging the opposites. Theft, lies, murder, all these things exist in the animal world and even in the plant world. We just now saw deception, the phenomena of being a parasite, all these things exist in nature. But when man comes in, he says, no, these are not possible. You have to reject them. Okay, so religion brings in the laws of God, insists on righteousness, stresses right action and wrongdoing, in spite of nature permitting and even encouraging the opposites, theft, lies, murder. Okay? But behind all these rather superficial practical activities, there is sensed as something deeper, that the moral ideals are too narrow, not fully convincing. It is felt that the true good is something deeper. The collective man finds it in the conscience, the fifth stage, which seems to know what is good and what is evil. But conscience is only a mental principle, uncertain and unreliable. But within man, there is a psychic element which discerns accurately, faultlessly, what is right for the soul and not for the ego. From the ego, we now come to the soul, which is the sixth stage. So, these are the stages of the awakening. So clearly, he has given us the whole thing. So now he says, what is the psychic that I am talking about? So now he describes it. What then is the spiritual or psychic witness, or what is to it the value of the sense of good and evil? It may be maintained that the one use of the sense of sin and evil is that the embodied being may become aware of the nature of the world of inconscience and ignorance, awake to a knowledge of its evil and suffering, and the relative nature of its good and happiness, and turn away from it to that which is absolute. So, evil and falsehood have a purpose. It makes you disgusted and you want to go something out of it. Or else, its spiritual use may be to purify the nature by the pursuit of good and the negation of evil until it is ready to perceive the supreme good and turn from the world towards God. Or, as in the Buddhistic ethical insistence, it may serve to prepare the dissolution of the ignorant ego complex and the escape from personality and suffering. But also, it may be that this awakening is a spiritual necessity of the evolution itself, a step towards the growth of the being out of the ignorance into the truth of the divine unity and the evolution of a divine consciousness and a divine being. For much more than the mind or life, which can turn either to good or to evil, it is the soul personality, the psychic being, which insists on the distinction, though in a larger sense than the mere moral difference. It is the soul in us which turns always towards truth, good and beauty, because it is these things that itself grows because it is by these things that it itself grows in stature. The rest, their opposites, are a necessary part of the experience, but have to be outgrown in the spiritual increase of the being. The fundamental psychic entity in us has the delight of life and all experience as part of the progressive manifestation of the spirit. But the very principle of its delight of life is to gather out of all contacts and happenings their secret divine sense and essence, a divine use and purpose, so that by experience our mind and life may grow out of the inconscience towards a supreme consciousness, out of the divisions of the ignorance towards an integralizing consciousness and knowledge. It is there for that, and it pursues from life to life its ever-increasing upward tendency and insistence. The growth of the soul is a growth out of darkness into light, out of falsehood into truth, out of suffering into its own supreme and universal Ananda. The soul's perception of good and evil may not coincide with the mind's artificial standards, but it has a deeper sense, a sheer discrimination of what points to the higher light and what points away from it. It is true that as the inferior light is below good and evil, so the superior spiritual light is beyond good and evil. But this is not in the sense of admitting all things with an impartial neutrality or of obeying equally the impulses of good and evil, but in the sense that a higher law of being intervenes in which there is no longer any place or utility for these values. There is a self-law of supreme truth which is above all standards. there is a supreme and universal good, inherent, intrinsic, self-existent, self-aware, self-moved and determined, infinitely plastic, with the pure plasticity of the luminous consciousness of the Supreme Infinite. So, the Gita comes to mind immediately. Sarva dharman parijajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all standards, give up all relativities, and go to the absolute non-relativity. So, we went very quickly through it, so I just summarized what we read just now. It's a psychic being. What then is a spiritual soul or psychic witness, and what does good and evil mean to it? We may say that sin and virtue are useful to the embodied soul to make it aware of the inconscient and ignorant nature of the world. Sin and falsehood and suffering urge man towards the opposites: virtue, truth and bliss. Another use, it may be held, is another use for the falsehood and evil. Another use, it may be held, is for the soul to purify itself from sin and evil, and pursue good and virtue, and turn away from sin and evil. In another view, the Buddhistic, they prepare the soul for the dissolution of the ignorant ego dominating body-mind life. But perhaps the best explanation of the presence of sin and evil is that they are spiritual necessities in the evolution which rises towards God's being, unity and consciousness. In the evolution, they are necessary. Otherwise, you won't be impelled to go up. If you don't see good, if you see only good and not evil, you will be static. Okay, so apart from life and mind, there is a soul personality, the psychic being, which insists clearly on the distinction between the divine and the undivine, though not necessarily in a moral sense. Morality may contradict the spiritual view of things. Interesting. Okay? Morality may contradict the spiritual view of things. Very good examples are there in Ramayana and also in Mahabharata, where the avatar is seeming to be doing immoral things. Okay? Many examples are there. But that's morality is a lower standard. Spiritual action is something higher. The divine can sin very happily to produce a good result. Okay? So, morality may contradict the spiritual view of things. The psychic always tends towards the truth, the good, because it grows only by these positives. The psychic being's main character is delight of life. It makes use of all experiences, positive and negative, and grows by them. In all contacts, it finds a divine use and grows towards consciousness, away from inconscience, grows into knowledge, away from ignorance, grows into truth, away from falsehood. The psychic conception of good and evil will not tally with the mind's valuation of things. The psychic discrimination is automatic, infallible. While it is true that there is no good and evil below mind, nor above the mind either, this does not mean that man has to accept both good and evil impartially and even to obey them. The psychic rejects the falsehood and accepts only the truth behind even seeming opposites. This is what he is saying in the para. Very interesting.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all. And we will see you again on Saturday, continuing the chapter, The Origin of Falsehood and Evil, beginning with the sentence, "If then evil and falsehood are natural products of the inconscience."